what is gaslighting? Well, it's basically it's a psychological technique. It's a tool, it's a strategy that people use to make the other person, meaning you, question your own reality. I mean, what's worse than not knowing what's real? But once they can get you to question your reality and your reality of your experience with them or life or some event or yourself, they can gain power over you. And that's the whole strategy for somebody to get power over somebody or control over them, to manipulate them, to degrade you, or have some kind of powerful dominant stance over you. And many times using you, exploiting you. And they use this technique basically to get control. Now, when we think about the other side of this, and we're going to get into some tools on this in a moment, but your biggest tool, your biggest asset is your ability to determine what's real and what's not real. I mean, we can't go through the day without having a firm grasp on reality. That's why when you pull up your GPS, you're trying to get somewhere, that's not the only thing that pops up. What pops up is that blinking light showing where you are right now. I think it was Max Dupre that said the first task of anybody in leadership is to define reality. We can't fix something. We can't go anywhere. We can't accomplish anything. We can't make our next move if we're standing on quicksand. Your whole system depends, your brain, your heart, your psychology, even your actions depends on, you don't know where to take the next step on a sidewalk if you don't know where you are. And that's what our subjective experience of reality has got to be. And your subjective experience has a great deal to do with its connection with objective experience, what actually is, what actually has happened. And what gaslighters do is they really screw up your subjective experience, your internal GPS, by making you question the objective data, stuff that you knew, saw, experienced, felt. And they'll tell you that's not true. They have tools to do that, which I'm going to leave you here with a pretty good list of being able to watch out for them. So if we don't know, what's happening here, who I am, who I really am, and what's safe and good and what's not, we're on very, very, very flimsy ground, and you can be really, really hurt. Some of you have experienced this. There's a lot of pain. So I hate it that this is true, but it's just true. Gaslighters use what is a very, very important part of you and all of us. The good part that we need to know is knowing our reality. But what I mean by they use a good part is one of the ways that we humans determine reality is by taking outside input. This is what mirror neurons do from infancy on. When a child starts to experience something and the mom or the caretaker is nodding with them and mirroring their tones, oh, that's hard. Oh, that hurt. Oh, that's happy. That begins to build this secure inside kind of compass in a human of knowing that's what I feel. This is true. I did fall down. I am happy. That does taste good. That doesn't taste good. And the outside world we need in order to validate, to build the equipment, and even in normal functioning. A lot of times what very, very, very emotionally intelligent people do, emotional intelligence is self-awareness and other awareness, among other things. They'll be in a meeting and they'll walk out and they'll turn to somebody and say, did I come across too hard? Or was I firm enough? Or did that sound critical to you? We need input from others, okay? But you don't want to be flying a plane asking the compass on the dashboard to tell you where you are if the compass is flawed. So we need good people to help us assess new data. I didn't really see, did you see how they reacted when no, I missed that. Well, this is what, you kind of lost them here. I do that whenever I speak. I want feedback from the people. They give me feedback of where it seemed like I connected and didn't connect, or, we need this. This is how we kind of stand on firm ground. That is what gaslighters use, that you're wired to take input from the outside. And that's one of the reasons why very good people, like probably you are, if you're listening to this, because what kind of people listen to stuff like this? People that want to grow, people that want to get better. And the most vulnerable people are nice and responsible people because they just assume everybody else is nice and responsible until they've gone through some significant something bad, like gaslighting. And you can be very vulnerable to it. Mainly, what it does is it makes you doubt yourself and your own experience. There's a popular phrase that came into existence 20 years ago or so. It says, my truth. Well, there's external truth. And even on the same external truth, we have different experiences about that truth. And we want to know from you, what's your experience of what we do? What did you see? What did you feel? Those are all good things. But what it does is it makes you doubt your experience. And that's like a, a hook inside of you. It's like they've reached over and now they got the dial of what you know and feel. You know, this is a big deal. In fact, one of my favorite verses in the Bible is out of Hebrews chapter 5, verse 14, I think. And listen to this. It says, solid food. Now, what is solid food? Babies move from, milk to solid food. And the older we get, the more solid food we can handle. Here's what it says: solid food, which would be like relationships, business, marriage, teamwork, all of that. You don't do that with babies. It says solid food is for the mature. Now, what mature means in that text, the Greek word means complete. In other words, we're ripe, like a fruit gets ripe. Doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you have all your parts working and you can handle whatever it is that life throws at you. Solid food is for the mature who, through, you ready for this? Through practice or experience, and here's the phrase I love, have had their senses trained to discern good from evil. You've got to be able to depend on what you sense, your truth, your experience. Sometimes our senses are immature. Sometimes they're wounded. Sometimes we question ourselves because of, we have a bad self-image or past experience, which we'll get into. But we have to be working on being able to pick what I like to call safe people. And we want to take validation of reality from safe people, not from unsafe people. And unsafe people are the ones that use the gaslighting techniques we're going to talk about, because we need our reality validated. And when we don't have it validated or invalidated, which is the main tool of gaslighting, then what happens is we get the great gift of doubt and fear and suspicion and pain and aloneness and control and feeling judged and put down, all that stuff that we can't do solid food tasks of life with. So we need to be validated. That's what deep listening does for somebody. And then we gain the capacity to be able to function. But gaslighting is a war to tear down your capacity to know your own reality. When people listen to you and help you get in touch with more of who you are, you can see more of reality, not less. So the results that happen, well, you shrink, less of you is available. Your world shrinks. You don't really know where you can go and where you can't. Your view of life shrinks. Of it's gross out there if that's the way it feels to be in a relationship or be in the world. And then almost worst of all, your freedom shrinks because now you're controlled by somebody else. So big deal. I mean, just read a list of symptoms here that I put together for you. You get confused and second guess yourself when you're with this person. You no longer feel like yourself. You question yourself, feel like everything you do is wrong, can't quite know what it is, but there's something not right here. It doesn't feel right. Start to feel more isolated, difficulty making decisions. You question yourself like, am I being too sensitive? Am I getting more and more withdrawn or even unsociable and emotionally or physically isolated? Constantly apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, because you feel like, oh, who am I to say that? Or maybe that was wrong. And then sometimes people even can begin, I've heard this from so many people in pain, they get in a pattern of defending the one that's hurting them because they've kind of been taught to do that. They've internalized the gaslighting that's gone on there. Sometimes you start to make excuses for the person, other people. They're trying to tell you, but you go, well, they didn't really mean it. But why? Well, you've learned that from them that you're in the position of having to defend them. Why? Because they've been defending themselves, and now you've taken that defending them voice inside your own head. You end up feeling hopeless and joyless and worthless or incompetent. And if that's not a crummy picture, then I don't know what is. So that's why we're talking about this. Now, who's most vulnerable to this? Humans, basically. I mean, you know, there's been a lot of studies. Sometimes, people are held captive. Their brains start to get morphed into a syndrome where they start to even identify with the one that's holding them captive through a technique of, variable reinforcement. They give you a little love and then they do all these other things and then they withhold it. And it kind of gets a lot of relationships feel like that. You have a good day and think, oh yeah, he is a good guy or she is a good guy or whatever it is. But then this other stuff happens. But wait, they're so one. It must be me and people. I mean, in the right circumstances, this is what you know harsh kinds of when people are held by terrorists, and all of that bad stuff they do to people to break them down, you're getting broken down in a gaslighting relationship. And you get enough of that, almost anybody. In fact, special forces, they have to go through a lot of training to not lose their reality because of the things and torture that can happen. So it's really, really, really a real deal for humans. But within the subset of humans, there are other people within that subset, not other than human subset, there's people who are more vulnerable than others. So um, here's kind of some of the most vulnerable people. People that have had a history with gaslighting parents or gaslighting siblings or gaslighting circles of friends or ex relationships or teachers or people that have gaslighted them, that gets in your history. And so now you're kind of wired in these patterns that make you question, and you always start to question yourself. As soon as you get gaslighted, it flips that switch. Oh, because it's just learned behavior basically, and we've internalized those patterns of relationship. So if you've grown up with somebody who, for example, I remember I treated a woman one time for quite a while. Wonderful person, but every time she was sad or every time she was even physically hurt, her mother would say, "That doesn't hurt. That's gaslighting." Or, "Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about." As if you don't already have something to cry about. Those are gaslighting techniques. So if you have a history like that, it'll make you even more vulnerable to it. Like I said, just nice, loving people are vulnerable to this because nice, loving people tend to be open and loving until they learn that there are some bad guys out there. And they can be very vulnerable because they take responsibility for themselves and then they take over responsibility for others. So now it's my fault that you're like this, and you start to dance, right? Related to that are people that are people pleasers. And want everybody to be happy, or don't want to upset the apple cart or whatever, and they tell you up is down, you go, oh, okay, and you agree to kind of keep them happy. Along with that, people with weak boundaries, when you're getting gaslighted, somebody's trying to put something in your head, and we have to have pretty firm boundaries to say, I don't think so. I don't agree with that. That's not me. That's not how I feel. It's not what I said. But people that don't have good boundary skills are very susceptible to this. If I don't have a fence around my yard, somebody can throw trash into my yard. Well, they're devaluing and gaslighting statements are trash in your yard. So weak boundaries can do this. And just having a vulnerable sense of self. We grow up, things happen. Some people don't feel secure of who they are and what they think and what they feel and what their opinions are and all that. That has to be built. And if it was torn down through trauma and other experiences, we kind of like don't have a secure sense of self and can be very, very susceptible to being convinced. A word for that is gullible, for example. Sometimes we're naive. We haven't had experiences of this. We don't know how to deal with this. So vulnerable sense of self can do this. And what if you carry a lot of resident guilt and shame inside of you? Well, somebody comes and makes you the bad one in the interaction, then it's just going to hook that. Yeah, I guess it's me. I'm stupid. What do I know? And shame, oh, it's just terrible. It makes you susceptible to questioning your own reality. And then a big one, a really, really big one, is when you're in a relationship where there's unequal power. And it can be institutional power or real, even authority power, like a boss, for example, or somebody that has a power relationship where they have leverage. They can use that leverage to gaslight. It can just be an awful thing when power is unequal. And that can be real power, like in a, you know, um, employment situation, for example, or it can be psychological power. Because some people come, I hate the phrase when I hear this people, people talk about situations, they go, well, he or she's got a really strong personality and that overpowers. I always say, you mean they're loud and angry? That's not a strong personality. It's actually a problematic personality with a lot of insecurity underneath it many, many times, but they're aggressive. Okay. And psychological power can come when somebody is more aggressive than you. So this is a real deal. And so it's very, very important, especially in parenting, to help build the sense within children where they can't be gaslighted, but also in our adulthood, because as, as we learned way back when, everybody's got an inner child, right? And there's a reason for that. I mean, why don't, when people, you ever read near death experiences, what do people always say most of the time, not in all of them, but a lot of times, when as soon as they exit time and space and the immaterial part of them leaves their body, they'll say they saw their whole life in front of them at once. Well, why? Because the only thing that makes time sequential is light. I mean, time is subject to the physical universe. So we get in the immaterial universe and your soul, your spirit, all that, time goes away. And what you find is that child is very active today. If that child is wounded, that child's present when you're talking to somebody when you're 40 years old. So this this stuff that happens can tap into all of that. And it is a big deal. And we need to kind of, for lack of a better word, get stronger, grow up, get mature, get ripe, get defended, get armored, get empowered. I don't mean to dominate others. I mean to hold on to yourself. So, what do these people do? What are the things you can look out for? Well, invalidation is the big word. They take your experience and they invalidate it. Validation is when we see somebody's experience and validate it as that's their experience. I'm sad about this. Instead of saying, well, that's not sad, say, gosh, tell me why that was sad for you. And we hear where somebody else is coming from. So, how about these phrases? Like I said earlier, well, that didn't hurt. I mean, somebody just did something very hurtful and you're wounded by it. And you go, well, that didn't hurt. I didn't do anything. Or shut up and I'll give you something to cry, or I'll give you something to cry about. Minimize. That's not a big deal. Why are you so upset about it? Denial. I didn't do that. What are you talking about? You have an experience and somehow they talk you out of what you just experienced. Experience is the key word, getting in touch with your experience of events, feelings, things that happened, things they did, your own pain, all of that, your own thoughts, even. How about this one? They'll counter you. No, you're just not remembering it right. Well, I just heard you say, no, no, you're not remembering that. Right? That's not what happened. Well, I saw you at the party and I mean, you were talking to her and I saw, no, no, you didn't see that right. They'll literally tell you that you're not remembering what just happened or what happened yesterday or some email you saw or some text you saw. How about this? Withholding or stonewalling. In other words, that's not engaging. You're trying to say something and they just blow it off and walk away. Well, that's invalidating in and of itself. Or you don't know what you're talking about. They'll somehow, it's kind of an ad hominem attack. They diminish you in some ways. So what you've experienced can't be true. Well, that's because you don't know anything about this topic. Or that's because, well, I'm an expert in this and you just don't know what you're talking about. Oh, how about that phrase? Denial. That didn't happen. I mean, I have seen people in my office and in business just literally deny something that just happened. It just happened. And the other person goes, am I? And you can see him kind of question, what just happened right then? Because that happened and he said it didn't happen. What happened? Am I on drugs or something? About stereotyping, big gaslighting too. Well, that's just because you're a whatever. That's because you're a woman, or that's because you're a man, or that's because you're a CEO, or that's because you're a whatever. And stereotyping somebody and diminishing what they've experienced because of the label that you put on them, very, very powerful. You just negate everything they say because they're one of those, whatever those is. How about these phrases? Well, you're just being oversensitive, or you're so negative. I mean, you're trying to give a valid complaint about, well, you're just so negative about everything. Boy, spouses use that a lot. You're so controlling. You're so controlling. All somebody did was make a request or say I didn't want to do it. Well, you're just trying to control me. Or how about this one? You're paranoid. You see somebody do something that doesn't make that's not right or didn't, and you bring it up. Well, you're just paranoid. I mean, you suspect everything. You don't trust me. How about that one? You just don't trust me. What are you questioning my integrity? Well, I wasn't, but I am now. Would be a good answer. Well, you're just imagining things. Your imagination's really scaring you here. You need to just stop imagining stuff. You're overreacting. How about this one? Calm down. Just calm down. And they're just trying to minimize some reaction. That never happened. No, that didn't happen. You're always remembering things wrong. You rewrite history. Or how about this one? You're just too emotional. You're being too emotional. And they will wear you down and literally wear you down. That's what invalidation does. It wears down your sense of reality, and then we're lost. So, let me give you a few tips on kind of what to do about this. Um, Watch their actions, not what they say. Watch their actions, not what they say, because they're going to say things very contrary to what they do. because you're experiencing what they do, you're seeing what they do, you're noticing what they do, and you got to have a firm grasp on what you saw. I know I saw this. Don't let the positive cookies confuse you, because this is what the Stockholm syndrome from way back when somebody's held somebody captive, but they'll give them a little cookie every now and then, and that lures them in and causes them to trust them. And don't let, just because you were the gaslighter, that you had a great date night or they did something nice for you or whatever, don't let that confuse you to invalidate when they gave you poison. Both are true. And it's the poison they're trying to talk you out of. Watch for projection. What they will do a lot of times, they will do something and accuse you of the very thing that they just did or just do all the time. Use a lot of projection. You're so controlling, or you're so this, or you're so that. They're describing themselves. Watch when they describe themselves and accuse you of being that way. They'll triangulate around you. They'll bring in others to kind of like fuse with them. I can't tell you how many people I've had tell me. We get a lot of callers on the program. I'll suggest, going to marriage counseling, for example, and I'll hear from the caller, well, I'm married to a narcissist, and we try marriage counseling, and he just convinced the counselor of false reality, and the counselor believed him. They'll triangulate, get other people on their side, because they're not really seeing what you know, and they're seeing the charming one and all of that. And sometimes they'll minimize outside voices. You'll find somebody or somebody else that validates you and you go, well, they're an idiot. Of course they said that, because they aren't good in some way. They're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. That's because they, and they minimize the outside validation of your reality that you're getting. All right. So here's another thing. And some people really need to do this. Gather evidence. Write it down, because you're going to get talked out of this. Write it down when it happens. If you're in a relationship like this and you're really questioning yourself, write down specifically what was said. Don't do a narrative. Write down what actually happened, what they actually said, and gather that evidence. You're going to need it when you go talk to somebody else sometimes. You also may need it to defend your actions. A lot of times I've seen so many and been involved in so many interventions with addicts, and addicts invalidate people. Oh, no, I wasn't drunk. No, that's not true. I just had a little, or it's not that bad. I mean, I just drink on the weekend. They do all this stuff. You may really need all of that when there's some sort of action that has to be taken. You go into an intervention, and what we generally tell the addict most times, or in some way, or at least for some time period, you know what, we're not really here to listen to you today. You're here to listen to everyone else. And their 7-year-old says, Dad, you told me that you were going to come to my baseball game in the championship because you hadn't been to any other games, because each time you're passed out on the couch drunk. And on Saturday, I came to get us ready and you were passed out. So you may need this evidence in some setting, at least with yourself, but maybe even for others. So sometimes you want to keep a secret diary. Just don't have it anywhere where they can find it. And here's the big one. You've got to talk to some trusted people. Now, by this, I don't mean triangulate in terms of, this happens all the time, that people will go in and just really kind of almost do the same thing. Excuse me. Almost do the same thing, go over there and paint an unreal bad picture to get somebody on their side. You need somebody you can trust that can actually help you, find out what true reality is. And so, but we need outside validation. This is where a good friend, a trusted other, especially a therapist who's used to this stuff and can read through the, you know, BS, be able to see it, be able to interpret it, be able to help you know what to do. You've got to look, I said humans need validation. The human you're in a relationship with is a gaslighter is invalidating you. You need some validation. Go tell them what happened. This is what happened. Am I crazy? And they'll say, that's abuse, or that's not okay what they're doing. You go, well, I kind of felt like something was wrong with it, but he told me that no, you need outside validation. Now, this may be illegal in your state, so make sure that it is legal. Um, but and sometimes you can even tell them, just hit record on your phone while this is happening. Now, you can't record somebody in a lot of places without their permission, but some places you can at least go make a voice memo of what you just experienced. But you can ask your own attorney about that. But I remember one woman, oh, her husband was awful at gaslighting. And she just started hitting record on her phone and took it into her therapist. And that's actually what helped her finally see it. Again, I'm not telling you to do anything illegal. You got to make sure of all that. But the point is, you got to have some way to write it down or go make a memo for yourself. And then take that diary, like I said, and share it with somebody, get their coaching on it. Always protect yourself from abuse. If you're being um, physically abused, you got to get help. You got to go to a shelter. You get somebody because that can get very dangerous. Some gaslighters are very, very, very toxic, malignant, and even evil in what they do to people. And you never know where it's going to go. And if you're in danger of that, get some help. You got to have some safe places already lined up. You know, even not when there's physical abuse, sometimes when you learn to set boundaries, and say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable in this conversation right now. I'll be willing to talk about it with our therapist, but I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to go in the other room, or I'm going to go over to Susie's house for the night. Have those safe places lined up, or have somebody that you can call. They're your safe team that you can call and say, here's what just happened. Talk me out of my confusion here. And then obviously, always doing a lot of self care. You need to be nourished and filled up yourself. But have a plan. What you're going to do when they say this. Now, if you go to boundaries.me, I have a whole course on this, many, many courses on the specifics of responses and scripted responses where you can practice and role play and get equipped. But there's a big skills building component to dealing with gaslighters.